I fear Minsleaf might have cooked, bro. She uploaded a video called Genshin just revealed what happened to the Traveler's Sibling in reference to, of course, the Temple of Space quest that we did. So I am very much looking forward to this. I've spoken to Min about a few things. Let's see what she has to say about this world quest.
Genshin just released a brand new world quest series called A Long Day in the Mountains, and it may have quietly revealed one of the biggest missing pieces in the sibling story.
It definitely could have. That scene, by the way, where we're walking across the beach and everything started glitching, I thought was absolutely beautiful. It was insane.
The strangest details has been this. When the Traveler's Sibling first arrived in Khaenri'ah, their memory was completely blank on arrival. And until now, we've never really had an explanation for how something like that could have happened.
True.
But this very world quest may have finally given us one.
Yes. Now you might be thinking, what the hell? How could that world quest tell us anything about like their sibling? We basically learned nothing about the sibling other than the fact that Asmodee is very likely their new master, right? Wrong. We actually learned a couple of other things. I've already spoken to Min about a little bit of this, but definitely not all of it, so let's cut.
This quest is centered around the Temple of Space, a realm tied to Asmodee, the god of space. The same god who separated the Traveler and their sibling in the very first cutscene of the game. And toward the end of the quest, there's a detail that is ridiculously easy to miss. Right before the final battle with Melanta, you can interact with a capsule called a damaged coffin.
The little prison-esque looking thing.
And this is what it says.
Time has washed away every trace, every lingering presence. And yet you know, the one who once rested here was the person most important to you.
Mother. I'm kidding. Can you imagine though? Can you imagine in like a year? It's like, yeah, it was actually your mom that was in here.
So go on, keep moving, keep traveling, until the day you meet again.
Oh
With wording
goodness.
that specific, this dialogue has to be about the Traveler's Sibling.
Yeah.
The person most important to you. Keep moving, keep traveling until the day you meet again. So this damaged coffin is very strongly implied to have once contained the Traveler's Sibling.
Which means that she definitely... So there's a couple of different methods that she could have used to get out of this place, right? Either number one, she got out of it herself and got sent back down to the land of Teyvat, losing all of her memories. Number two, Asmodee helped her escape because she needed her as like some kind of contingency plan, or obviously wanted to adopt her as her new student, whatever, Asmodee being the master, which I think is more likely, but I do think Lumine could have got out by herself, to be honest. And it also made me think, I was talking to Min about this, there is nothing saying that when we also got cubed, the Temple of Space isn't where we ended up, inside of an apathic interval. Because think about where we woke up as well. We woke up on the shores of Mondstadt, fairly close to where the Temple of Space would have been. And it made me think as well, if somebody aided Lumine with getting out, could it possibly make sense that the Traveler, Aether, was aided by Easteroth possibly? And that's why we wake up next to the Timeless Island, and also why Venti's suspicious line in the beginning of the game when he's like, we meet again. I don't know, it made me think about that. That's something that I really do want to delve into with Min, because she was also very curious about that when we spoke about it. So let's go a little bit further and see. Do y'all think the Travelers were aided out of their cells in the apathic interval? Or do you think they were just powerful enough to escape it themselves?
Coffin is found right outside the Cage of Suchness, the area where Asmodee herself would have been chilling if she hadn't abandoned the Temple of Space. This means the sibling was imprisoned within the Temple of Space at one point.
Indeed.
Asmodee created the Temple of Space to store various entities and items of interest, and that those taken there would never be able to die. That's why you see so many people from different ages of Teyvat. Historia also explains that the temple was originally meant by the gods to be an exhibition hall for the conservation of fallen civilizations, but that the sisters of that one great god started bringing in whatever they found interesting. He also said...
Yeah, you're right. We didn't necessarily wake up there, but that was definitely the starting point of the game, right? Where we started the whole journey. It was the first teleport waypoint we ever got. We'd never seen a statue of the Seven, so logistically speaking, it makes sense that we didn't really travel very far out of that realm, so we probably woke up fairly close to that area, and only traveled very close to that area.
As the god of space's sisters would occasionally grant small pardons for acts of change. So it's essentially Asmodee's room, but she lets her sisters decorate it. And if the sibling was really trapped here once, then the next question becomes obvious. How did they get out?
Yeah.
And what did they have to sacrifice?
Memories. Well, I'm very curious how Min goes into this part. I'm very excited.
Leave. Because the Temple of Space doesn't just store things. It has very specific rules.
Yep, it does. And then This is probably going to be an Aniba sponsor. Bro, Aniba going crazy with this. Wait,
Fourth
if it
file
is.
to bring you news from today's sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by Aniva.
It is, dude. Aniba sponsors are going crazy right now. I mean, for me as well, to be entirely fair.
The highest point of the temple is the Atrium of Suchness, the place where gods and watchers dwell, and
Yes.
where hidden truths are kept. Historia explains that if you intend to leave that place, you can't take its history, secrets, or knowledge with you. Then
Yep.
he says something even more important. Only those who choose to abandon all their memories are permitted to enter that hall. He explains that to seek an audience with the master of the temple, or Asmodee in this case, is to seek answers and closure. And because of that, all memories gathered there are supposed to be wiped away. So
Yep.
to leave the Temple of Space, you have to sacrifice your memories. The traveler's sibling says that when they first arrived in Khaenri'ah 500 years ago, their memory was completely blank.
So, I mean, it kind of would make sense, right? If the unified civilization, or what Asmodee stored in the Temple of Space, was still around 500 years ago, pre-cataclysmic era, I guess, it would make sense that Lumine could have just landed in Teyvat after leaving the Temple of Space with no memories. Or with a few memories that dissipate incredibly quickly, as we saw with what was her name in the World Quest? Zetland, Jesus, yeah, as we saw with Zetland. So it does seem a lot of the time the sacrifice that people make to enter that area of the temple and leave is indeed their memories. That was explained to us very well.
The siblings' lore also says they were the first to awaken from hibernation with no
Yep.
memory of the traveler, and that they appeared in Khaenri'ah after the heavens responded to the summoning. Their memory loss is one of the oldest unresolved mysteries in the entire main story. The siblings' blank memory on arrival in Khaenri'ah isn't explained by the opening cutscene. The opening cutscene happens later, during the Cataclysm, when
Yep.
the twins are trying to leave Teyvat and Asmodee cubes them. So the siblings' memory loss happens before the opening cutscene even begins. That means there had to be some earlier event, some earlier intervention that causes Sibling to arrive in Khaenri'ah with their memories already wiped.
So, do you know the really interesting thing here as well? And I'm hoping Min kind of touches on this. There was a part of the world quest where the Traveler, or Paimon, was like, I think it was around 500 years ago, but time's been really weird since then. So we don't know how long it's been now. And that is a really interesting thing because we've been to so many different places where time has been timey-wimey, fucky-wucky bullshit, right? I mean, we've literally been to the goddamn moon at this point. We've been to different realms where time flows differently. In the Abyss, time flows differently. And it's I do wonder actually how long it has been for the Traveler specifically, even just since we started the game, or since the Cataclysm now, because it's obviously been more than 500 years now, but how long?
That means there had to be some earlier event,
Yes.
some earlier intervention that causes Sibling to arrive in Khaenri'ah with their memories already wiped. And the Temple of Space now gives us a possible scenario for how that happened. So there are really two possibilities here. The first is that the Sibling was taken to the Temple of Space after the events of Genshin's opening cutscene.
That is my thought. I do think when she was cubed, she was taken to the Temple of Space. And I think we likely were as well. Maybe. It's such a hard one, dude. Such a hard one to kind of put my finger on, but I do think that could be the case.
Second is that the opening cutscene was not actually the first time the Sibling and Asmodee met. It was the second. In other words, the Sibling may have already been trapped in the Temple of Space, possibly inside that damaged coffin when they first arrived in Teyvat.
I like that, but then where would she have gone when she was cubed then? Let Min cook.
And they just don't remember any of it. This video is about that second theory. Because if that's true, then this may be the sequence of events that happened after the twins crash into Teyvat. The twins' ship crashes into Nodcry. The Sibling is the
Okay.
first one to awaken. Asmodee may have pulled the Sibling into the Temple of Space, which could explain why the ship looks unopened even though the Sibling had already left it.
So she's saying that after the ship landed in Nodcry, I'm going to refer to Aether as the MC here and Lumine as the Abyss twin. Lumine was already removed from the ship by Asmodee and sent to the Temple of Space. Interesting. Okay.
That would explain why the Sibling later appears in Khaenri'ah after the heavens responded to the summoning, and why the circumstances of their arrival are so abnormal. Because it was Asmodee who responded to Khaenri'ah's summoning. Then comes the most important part.
That'd be so interesting though. So Asmodee would have become the Lumine's new master later than this, and then I'm assuming at this point Asmodee was still with the Shades, because in the God's Limit teaser the Shades are like, oh, she's missing. And we know that Renova, another one of the goddamn Shades, had a big hand to play in the Cataclysm. Was that with or without Asmodee's kind of consent or help?
The price of leaving their coffin or escaping the Temple of Space is memory.
Yes.
Which explains why the Sibling emerges in Khaenri'ah completely forgetting the Traveler. After that, Khaenri'ah adopts the blank sibling and gives them a new role. The sibling says that after arriving there, they served as Khaenri'ah's prince or princess for many years before slowly recovering their memories of the traveler. And then something happens that causes the sibling to be tied to Teyvat in a way that traveler isn't. Unlike the traveler, the sibling ends up recorded in Irminsul, even though beings from outer space normally should not be. The lore suggests that Khaenri'ah is related to the reason why. So whatever happened to the sibling didn't just separate them from the traveler, it may have changed.
By the way, I 100% still think that in the end, Aether is going to become anchored to Teyvat and become part of the Irminsul. I don't think it's going to be the Irminsul, though. If Dotori is going to end up burning that damn tree, we're going to be recorded in the history of Teyvat in one way or another. And I think that's going to be a big necessity when it comes to building the new world.
Their status deeply enough that Teyvat itself treats them as part of its own history. Then much later, during the Cataclysm, Asmodee intervenes again. And if this theory is right, then this would be Asmodee and the siblings' second meeting. They wouldn't remember meeting Asmodee nor being in the Temple of Space at all. Now, the word damaged in Damaged Coffin is also really interesting. It makes me think that the sibling may have somehow escaped the coffin themselves, or maybe someone broke them out. We know from the quest that the seat of Asmodee has been left empty, and the rules of the Temple of Space have begun to falter.
Yes.
So the coffin being damaged might mean the prison was no longer functioning properly. Now let's talk about Khaenri'ah. Khaenri'ah had already been interested in Outlanders, aka aliens, long before the Eclipse Dynasty. Since the Crimson Moon Dynasty,
Do you think Khaenri'ah had a Area 51 where they were just keeping a ton of random bullshit from space, bro? That'd be kind of cool.
they had an orphanage meant to house children from beyond this world in hopes that one such child would possess the power to transcend the gods. They were looking for a descender. But the sibling is not a descender, only Traveler is. So if the sibling is just some alien from outer space, why were they treated differently? I think the most likely answer is that the sibling was not just your ordinary Outlander. They seem to have been treated as the answer to a long-running Khaenri'ah hope or wish. Maybe the sibling was meant to be a descender and we just took that future away from them.
Yeah, and that's why they became the Abyss sibling, because they were an unchosen fate.
It's a thought. King Irmin immediately declares them his heir and savior, and soon after uses them as a vessel for unlimited abyssal power. That only makes sense if Khaenri'ah or King Irmin saw the sibling as something more than an Outlander. They saw them as the answer they had been waiting for. If the sibling arrived in Khaenri'ah as a blank slate, then perhaps the memory wiped by Asmodee made them more findable to Teyvat. The Khaenri'ahs could write a story for them and make them usable somehow. It's easy to blame Asmodee, but there's one detail that suggests this might not have been entirely her fault. Historia says he suspects the path to the heavens may not have been designed by the mistress of the temple, because the whole description of using memories to construct the path feels too emotionally charged. So the quest itself is warning us not to blame every exact detail of the temple's mechanics directly on Asmodee personally, despite what Paimon might feel. Because Paimon was so insistent on calling Asmodee a bad god. But it's
Indeed.
Paimon was so insistent on calling Asmodee a bad god.
So what do y'all reckon? What do y'all reckon is Paimon's deal at this point, bro? What do y'all reckon it is? Because there's a couple of theories going around at the minute, and it did also make me think afterwards. Obviously, Paimon is not just straight up Asmodee. She's just not gonna be. However, I do think there is still some merit to the fact that she could be a sibling of Asmodee, or even more so, I have a feeling she could be. So you remember in Varka's quest, I think it was, when he said, it was explained to us as players basically that the gods can easily, like very easily, split themselves into different kind of clones, souls, like basically the three deadly cells with Zebai, right? Do you think she could just be a fragment of Asmodee's soul? Because I was thinking, what if she did that and then she like went under Lumine so she could keep an eye on Lumine, and then sent Paimon to us so that we could also have an eye on us, and then maybe there's another one somewhere, I don't fucking know, bro, but there seems to only really need to be two, to be fair. I don't know how likely that'd be, because then I was thinking, why would Asmodee be watching us in the Temple of Space, and also while we were with Lumine? Was Paimon with us in the Temple of Space when those portals showed up at the end? She was, right? Yeah, so then I think that theory loses a bit of credibility. Unless it's kind of like Dotori's segments, I guess, where they all have their own autonomy. Same with the three deadly selves, actually, right? They all have their own autonomy. They don't know what each of the other is doing at that moment. Interesting. I need to let that theory cook a little bit more and see. If anybody has any ideas down in the YouTube comments as well, please do let me know.
But it still doesn't affect our theory. The sibling was likely trapped in the Temple of Space, and they may have sacrificed their memories in order to leave. In the past, we've toyed with the idea that Asmodee and the sibling are possibly working together or have a deal with each other.
Well, now it is confirmed. They indeed are.
But this world quest makes me realize for sure there's a connection between the god of space and the sibling that has yet to be revealed. But there's one more weird detail worth bringing up before we end.
Wait, did she not include the end bit where Melanta's...
Across from the coffin that seems to have once contained the sibling, there is another capsule with a note inside it. That note sounds like it belongs to the author of Vera's Melancholy, a book series about the Andromeda Empire, a civilization that apparently stretches across half the galaxy group.
I'm telling you, bro, Malky and Escher are definitely Dottore. People are saying there's no way it is. Hey, remember what Sandrone final words to Dottore were, bro? Go to hell, Dottore. And bro took it literally. I was just saying, I think it'd be so fucking funny if that was actually the case.
That alone is already interesting, because it means the temple may not have been storing only one unusual alien.
True.
There's a possible side theory here that the second chamber may have contained Khaenri'ah, Alice's partner. Since he's male, he's a seeker, he travels to other planets, and he has a connection to Teyvat's borders. So far, he seems to fit the criteria for being the author of Vera's Melancholy. However, there's no direct evidence right now that Khaenri'ah is a novelist or that he wrote Vera's Melancholy. So just treat this as a fun theory. I plan to do a fuller recap and analysis of this quest, so stay tuned for that. Trust me, there's so much to cover.
Hell yeah, man.
Haven't even scratched the surface. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. I'm your leafy lore keeper Minzif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm surprised she didn't leave. Oh, you know what? She actually messaged me last night. Remember I had a correct theory? Like, what if Asmodee and the sibling are working together or something? Apparently Melanta in the final battle goes, oh, master, why did you choose him or her instead of me? And she thought it was talking about Zetland because she was playing Aether's POV and didn't know it changed. And I was like, yeah, I instantly clocked that shit. You cooked. And she was like, I was confused. People had to point it out to me. You're sharp. I don't know why. Instantly, as soon as that scene played, I was like, oh my god, that's the fucking sibling. Because it just didn't make sense in my head for it to be about Zetland. But it is absolutely fucking banging, dude.